Imagine waking up inside a massive stone castle. You look out from the highest tower and see thousands of acres of land stretching into the distance. Below you, farmers work the fields, merchants trade at the gates, and soldiers guard your walls. But here is the secret most people never think about. Owning a medieval castle was not just about power and luxury. It was one of the most expensive businesses in history. Today, we uncover the true economics of owning a medieval castle, how much it cost, how it made money, and why many nobles went broke trying to maintain one. For centuries, the medieval castle stood as the ultimate symbol of power, protection, and prestige. A fortress of stone, a lord's residence, a military stronghold. But behind these massive walls was something rarely seen, an enormous economic machine. A castle was not simply a home. It was a business. It required workers, resources, farmland, soldiers, and constant investment. Building one could consume years of labor and the wealth of an entire noble family. Today, we're exploring the economics of owning a medieval castle, from construction costs and daily expenses to how these giant fortresses actually generated wealth. Before a single stone was placed, the first major economic decision was location. A castle built in the wrong place could become a financial disaster. The ideal location provided three advantages. First, defense. A hilltop position made the castle harder to attack and forced enemies to fight uphill. Second, control. Many castles were built near roads, rivers, and trade routes because controlling movement meant controlling money. And third, resources. A castle needed nearby forests for timber, quarries for stone, farmland for food, and villages to provide labor. The location was not chosen because it looked impressive. It was chosen because it could generate wealth. Building a medieval castle was one of the largest construction projects of its time. Thousands of workers could be involved. Stone had to be cut from quarries. Timber had to be transported from forests. Iron tools, weapons, and equipment had to be produced by skilled craftsmen. Every worker needed food, shelter, and payment. The walls alone could take years to complete. A small castle might require several years of construction, while a massive royal fortress could take decades. The true cost was not just the materials. It was the enormous amount of human effort required to transform an empty piece of land into a powerful fortress. So who paid for these enormous stone structures? Usually, the money came from three major sources. The first was royal wealth. Kings often funded castles because they helped maintain control over important regions. The second was income from land. A noble's wealth came from the estate surrounding the castle. Farmers worked the fields, produced crops, and paid rent or taxes. The third source was war. Successful military campaigns could bring new territory, treasure, and resources. A castle was not built only with gold. It was built with political power. But construction was only the beginning. The biggest financial challenge was keeping the castle alive. Stone walls constantly needed repairs. Wooden structures could rot. Roofs needed replacement. Weapons required maintenance. And hundreds of people living inside needed food every single day. A castle also needed a permanent military force. Guards had to be paid. Horses had to be fed. Armor and weapons had to be repaired or replaced. A castle that could not afford maintenance was no longer a symbol of power. It was simply an expensive pile of stone. A medieval castle did not exist alone. It was the center of a local economy. The surrounding villages supported the castle by providing resources. Farmers produced grain and livestock. Blacksmiths created tools and weapons. Merchants brought valuable goods. In return, the castle provided protection, justice, and political stability. The relationship was simple. The land created wealth. The castle controlled that wealth. The greatest source of castle wealth was not the castle itself. It was the land around it. A powerful lord could control thousands of acres. This land produced everything the castle needed: food for the household, materials for construction, resources for trade, and income through taxes and rent. The castle was the headquarters of a much larger economic system. The stone walls were impressive, but the farmland was what paid the bills. A castle was basically a small city. Inside its walls lived many different groups. The lord and his family represented political power. Knights provided military protection. Servants maintained daily operations. Craftsmen repaired equipment. and farmers created the food supply. Every person had an economic role. Without this network of workers, even the strongest castle would fail. The castle was not powerful because of its walls. It was powerful because of the people and resources connected to it. The original purpose of a castle was protection. But defense was expensive. A lord needed trained soldiers, weapons, armor, horses, and enough food to survive long sieges. During times of war, expenses could increase dramatically. Owning a castle was similar to owning a private military base. It provided security and influence, but it required enormous financial commitment. Owning a castle was expensive. So how did a lord make money from it? The answer was control. A castle gave its owner authority over the surrounding land. Farmers paid rent to use fields. Villagers paid taxes. Merchants paid fees to sell goods. The lord could also control important services like mills, markets, and bakeries. Every transaction created a small stream of income flowing back to the castle. The castle was not just protecting wealth. It was collecting wealth. Many castles became economic centers because they attracted trade. A protected settlement was safer for merchants. And where merchants went, money followed. Markets developed near castle gates. Blacksmiths, bakers, tailors, and craftsmen built businesses nearby. Some castles controlled bridges, roads, and river crossings. Anyone passing through these areas might have to pay a toll. The castle became a combination of military base, government center, and financial hub. Owning a castle was also about status. A medieval lord was expected to display wealth. This meant expensive clothing, large feasts, entertainment, hunting expeditions, and a large household of servants. A noble could not simply own a castle. They had to appear powerful enough to deserve one. But this lifestyle created another financial burden. The larger the castle and household became, the more money was needed to maintain the image of power. Not every castle owner was wealthy. Many nobles struggled financially. A castle could be a valuable asset, but it could also become a heavy burden. Repairs, soldiers, servants, and daily expenses could consume enormous amounts of money. Some nobles borrowed heavily to build impressive castles. Others were forced to sell land when their income could no longer cover their expenses. A castle represented power, but power without money could quickly collapse. In many ways, a medieval castle functioned like a modern corporation. The castle owned assets. It controlled resources. It managed workers. And it generated income. The difference was that medieval wealth was based mainly on land and control. A modern company may own technology or factories. A medieval lord owned farms, forests, villages, and strategic locations. The castle was the headquarters of a medieval economic empire. Eventually, the economics of castles changed. New technology transformed warfare. Cannons became powerful enough to destroy traditional castle walls. Large armies became more important than individual fortresses. Kings centralized power, and many nobles no longer needed massive stone castles to prove their authority. The same fortress that once represented the future slowly became a symbol of the past. So what was the true economics of owning a medieval castle? It was not simply about having a beautiful home. It was about controlling an entire economic system. The walls were expensive. The soldiers were expensive. The lifestyle was expensive. But if managed correctly, a castle could generate enormous wealth and influence. A successful castle owner was not just a noble. They were an entrepreneur of the medieval world. Today, castles are remembered as romantic symbols of knights, kings, and forgotten kingdoms. But behind every tower and stone wall was a complex economic machine. A castle represented millions of hours of human labor, a network of farms and villages, a constant demand for money and resources. It was one of the largest investments a person could make in the medieval world. And the greatest lesson from medieval castles is this: buildings create influence, but systems create wealth. The true power of a castle was never just the stone surrounding it. It was the economy that existed beyond its walls. This was the economics of owning a medieval castle.